To order. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
A motion to approve. Anyone want to second that?
Second.
All right. We have a motion to approve the agenda and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Motion approved. Approval of the minutes. I was not here for that meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Ed, a second by Elizabeth. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approved. We have docket number BOA 04-20-2301, Anthony Worst. Like Lou will be giving us the presentation.
Yep, I will run you through the introduction here. How's this sound, Elizabeth? Sound okay?
Good. Oh, 100%.
Great, that's good to hear.
I got a new toy.
Okay, so we're here to hear our first Board of Adjustment petition, a request to allow a new dwelling on steep slopes and within the Bluff Overlay District pursuant to Chapter 11.6.1 of the Winona County zoning ordinance. And my clicker's not working. No, I'm going both ways. It's not doing anything. Maybe I'll do off and on here and we'll do it. Let me try it again. Nope. Okay. The site is located in Pleasant Hill Township in section 32, located along County Road 13. You can see in the map there, Pleasant Hill Township is down along the southeastern corner of Winona County. It abuts Houston County to the south. In the aerial photo map there, you can see County Road 11 heads up, comes out of Ridgeway, just off the north part of the map, heads south, and then County Road 13 heads off of there, and the project location is highlighted in green. Next slide. This is a site plan submitted by the petitioner. It shows County Road 13 and the proposed building site. The driveway coming in from the neighbor's property. There is an easement that the driveway would follow, and then follows the contour over to the proposed building site. And you can see the property line there as well. Next. This is a staff generated map essentially showing the same thing, but the lines there are contour lines. Those are 10-foot contours. You can see the stream across the road there, with the wider contours indicating flatter land, and as the slope gets steeper, the lines get tighter to the south and east on the map. The bluff essentially comes from the top off the map all the way down to the road. So this would be located on a mapped bluff area between the toe and the top of the bluff. development is proposed to occur within a slope range of 20 to 29%. So generally the bluff is, well, not generally, it is the lower part of 100-foot segments that becomes 18% or less. So this is just above that 18% threshold at around 20 to 29%. Next slide. So some slight considerations. The parcel consists of proposed 25.58 acres of wooded bluffland. Access is through legal easement, as I stated before, from the Pagel property to the northeast. Building site is the least steep area on the property, so it is a bluffland parcel, almost all bluff side. And the building site ranges from 20 to 25%, where the driveway is between 20 and 29%. Residence is proposed to be a walkout basement to take advantage of those slopes. Next. Here's a photo of the access from County Road 13 towards the driveway. You can see the driveway heading off along the contour from the access point. The Highway Department has reviewed the access point location and is I don't know if they've actually issued a access permit yet, but didn't have any concerns with the location. Next slide. Here's a photo of the proposed building site as the road enters that location. As you can see, it's already been somewhat excavated. Gives you an idea of the existing slopes there, what that looks like. The SWCD has been on site with staff and reviewed it, and that's in your packet as well, their review. I wouldn't say that they didn't have any concerns, but they thought that the slopes could be managed. And the application would require a landscape plan to address soil erosion control and that type of thing. So, and they'll be, the SWCD would also be reviewing that plan along with us. So next slide. This is just a little bit closer of the building site there. Another item that they'll have to overcome for this site is when you're looking at 20 to 25%, 27% slopes, is a septic system. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit more clearing of some of the trees there, and the contractor is going to have to get up there to look at the viability of a septic system. So that'll also be a challenge on those a little bit steeper slopes. Yeah, go ahead, Elizabeth.
That white solid line, what is that? It's a point, going to a point?
The dotted line there?
No, the solid white line.
The road?
Oh, it's like a triangle there?
Yeah,
That's part of the parcel.
okay.
That would be the parcel line.
So their driveway is not in the parcel, that's in the,
It's on the neighboring
Driveway.
parcel. Yep, and that will have an easement
Right.
To allow that access. And here's another photo showing the uphill from the building site, and what that looks like to give you an idea of the setting there. Township acknowledgement form was completed by Pleasant Hill Township. They indicated no comments. We did not receive any other comments, official comments on the petition other than the review by Highway and the SWCD. As always, you need to be looking at all the materials and testimony, and then making findings to support your decision based on the criteria. Staff analysis and draft findings are written to support granting the variance. And we've attached 5 conditions. With that, are there any questions for me at this time?
Lou, could you give us a general background on the overlay district that applies here? When it was created, approximately the purpose of it, and your knowledge regarding the purpose of the district?
Well, the zoning district was created in 2011, the Bluff Overlay District, but there is a bluff component within the shoreland. And so that's been around since the 70s or 80s, and that's a state requirement. And this location is located within the shoreland, so that previous bluff designation would still apply to this property. So, I mean, you could look at the new bluff ordinance being adopted in 2011, which goes beyond the shoreland, but this one being within the shoreland would have been within a bluff and have essentially the same standard apply. And we'd be here for a variance anyways. And that one goes back to the 70s or 80s.
What was the purpose of creating the overland district?
The overlay district, it's twofold. There's pieces of it for just development purposes on bluffs, or there's a visual component, how that looks on the landscape. There's also an erosion control component that when you get on steeper slopes, development is more difficult, and you get problems with driveways and erosion control and that type of thing, as well as the habitats and more environmental factors that come along with that.
I sort of generally went through the 2014 comprehensive plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like one of the key features of the plan is the protection of the bluffland areas in the county.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I think that's been something that's been actually going back the 2001 comprehensive plan. That was a big push from that comp plan as well. It's been something that the community countywide as a whole has been concerned with for quite some time. Yep. And so the 2010 or 2011 ordinance was really a response to, years and years of looking at that issue and, grappling with that and then trying to address it.
And is the comprehensive plan together with the overlay district a combined effort to try and preserve the natural beauty of the bluffs in the county?
That's part of it. Yep, that's part of it.
So I look at chapter 11, and this would be provision 11.6.1.3, and it recites developments and other land disturbing activities are prohibited on slopes over 25%. Such slopes shall be preserved in their natural state.
Mm-hmm.
What is the purpose of that provision?
Well, it's so it's the same as the bluff ordinance in general. When we were looking at that that ordinance, we were looking at bluff areas, but then we were also recognizing that there are areas outside of designated bluffs that are on steep slopes that also need to have some sort of protection or additional requirements and thought that would go into developing on those. And so the 18 to 25% is the requirement for a CUP. generally that is looked at as beyond the bluff overlay. So if you're within the toe and top of a bluff, the bluff ordinance would apply. If you're looking at beyond the bluff areas and areas that don't meet the definition of a bluff, then the steep slope requirements may apply to those.
So this provision is contained in this overlay district though, right?
Right, yeah.
And just reconfirm for me that the development that we're considering now in part exceeds the 25% prohibition.
It does, yeah.
It
Yeah,
also would
yeah.
require a variation, right? Which is
Well, that's why we're here. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So one is to kind of change it a little bit. I'll give you an example. If you were to be in an area that's less than 100 feet from top to bottom. So a lot of our areas out in the western part of the state or of the county are don't have a rise. They might be a little butte or something that don't have a rise of greater than 100 feet. So those areas wouldn't be considered a bluff, but they could be quite steep. And so some of those slope requirements would apply to some of those areas. In this case, since we're on a bluff and they're proposing to, have a variance to allow building on slopes between 18 and 25 or just a little bit more than that. A conditional use permit would then apply here. So if you guys allow the variance, then tonight, one of the conditional use permits that they'll be looking at is to allow building on 18 to 25% slopes to cover that window there. Tonight also, they'll be looking at a conditional use permit for a new dwelling on less than 40 acres and a new dwelling in the shoreland, which are all triggers for a conditional use permit. So there's 3 conditional use permits essentially wrapped up into the meeting tonight.
This,
Yeah, into this if you were to approve the variance. Yeah.
did you say you had 5 conditions?
That's what the slide said. Yeah. Do we only
I
have 3?
see 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that should be 3 conditions.
And it does cite the ordinances.
Yeah, yeah.
And back to the overlay features. 11.6.1.4 also provides that proposed development, including all structures and driveways, are prohibited between the toe and the top of the bluff as defined in Chapter 4. Would you at least confirm or reconfirm for me that this proposed development is going to fall within the toe and the top of the bluff?
Correct.
So we have 2 provisions in the overlay district that recite specific prohibitions to development, presumably because those prohibitions are to promote and enhance the comprehensive plan, which recognizes the tremendous asset that the bluffs and the slopes in Winona County provide to its residents and the tourists and the sports people that are active here. And the ordinance recites specifically that a development like this would be prohibited, And
That's correct. It does say that.
as I read and understand the concept of a prohibition, that means it is prohibited. And there's a reason for that. And I, of course, don't have the history and knowledge of the reasons that you would. But one of the things I strive to do is try and follow the spirit and the intent of the zoning ordinance when I consider these applications. And as I view the application and superimpose the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan over the application, I believe that the application does not comport or comply with the zoning ordinance or the comprehensive plan.
We'll discuss that part once we move along a little further, I think, but
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you have any questions for us, feel free to let us know. We're going to go into public hearing and then there'll be discussion. And then part of what you, what the Board of Adjustments responsibility is to look at those criteria and come up with a response to them, and then and as a group, and then come to a decision. So.
So, is there precedent for this narrow, you're saying 25 to 29?
Mhm.
Is there precedent for other dwellings with those same kinds of variables?
Well, I don't like the word precedence just because there are some legal ramifications to that I think Stephanie could get into as far as land use decisions go. Technically, there is no precedence. I don't believe as far as land use decisions go like that in this case. But are there examples out there of other locations that are other dwellings that are located on those types of slopes? Yeah, I mean, there are other sites in the county that are developed in a similar way. There's sites in the county that are much worse, on much steeper slopes with much steeper driveways to them. There are sites up on halfway up the bluff or at the top, and quite a few old ones that have been at the toe as well. So there are lots of examples out there. As far as since the ordinance was adopted, there are examples also of variances being granted to the bluff the bluff standard, and there's a couple of examples of them being denied as well. So it's kind of a mixed bag as far as the requests that have come before us and how the board has looked at those.
Yeah, and I thought I read someplace where the number of such dwellings is restricted over a certain amount of area. Is that true? So you couldn't go ahead and put 3 more.
Right. There's a number of there's a couple of different requirements in the ordinance that would limit density. One being at this point it's the 40 acre lot size that requires a conditional use permit. And then there's the before that there was the quarter section, which was the previous density standard. There's also the subdivision requirements that come into effect as well when you talk about multiple splits, and especially lots that are 5 acres or less than 5 acres and less than 300 feet of road frontage.
And what is the density right now in that particular?
As far as how many are in that area, I'd have to look. I mean, it's a low density area. There aren't a ton of homes out in that area. But I haven't looked specifically up and down the road there. Kind of depends on how far you go.
Yeah. And it varies, the slopes.
Mhm. Yeah, there's not a lot of development or homes in that valley. Just a handful. Is that all for now? Should we move forward to the public hearing?
yeah, we can do that and we can come back to you if we have more questions.
That could be part of the public hearing, usually.
Yeah, okay. I was kind of wondering that anyway.
Next phase.
Petitioner, is a petitioner, would you like to speak?
Sure.
Hi, my name's Anthony Wurst. I think Luke covered it pretty well. I will add that I purchased this land from my grandparents in August of 2018. Prior to that, they owned it since 1966. It's where I grew up. I don't plan to build anything extravagant, or I plan to stay with kind of the harmony of the land, I guess. There is the easement Lou mentioned. The easement is because I tried to put in a driveway or plan a driveway, and there was some site distance issues along County Road 13 with putting in a driveway. So Daryl, the landowner with the easement, he's been a family friend of my grandparents for years, and he agreed to that. It stays with the land. It's lifetime. It's written up by an attorney. As far as the land, I'm a big hunter, so I want to preserve as much of the land as I can. With this dwelling, I don't plan to, again, with the slopes, I understand the slopes and the bluffs. I want to preserve those, but so I want to disrupt or preserve as much of that as I can, but also build a home. The landscaping plan, I think we've talked about that with Olivia a little bit. My builder and excavator, I guess, kind of worked on that, or we started that, but you understand that there's some conditions. So other than that, I don't think I have anything else unless you guys have any questions.
Anyone have questions for Anthony?
Yes.
Go ahead.
And because you know the property so well, and at least speaking for myself, I don't. The location of the proposed house is in what has been referred to the area between the toe and the top of the bluff. Is that your understanding?
Correct, it is.
Do you own property that would allow you to build outside of that restricted area or not?
So no, I think it's a good question. Where the building site is proposed right now is the flattest area to build on. Would make the most sense with the slopes and the layout of the land. So I kind of took that into consideration. I own 25.58 acres. So I took that into consideration of the layout, where the best building site would be. And this would be the best with considering the slopes.
So when you look at your piece of property from top to bottom, are there areas that would be looking at the top that would allow you to build, but not be within that restricted area? If you look at the top of your property.
Sure. I guess I'm not familiar enough with the percentages and stuff. That'd be a question for Olivia or Lou. I would say, well, I don't know if I'm answering right. I would say this is the best location based off that, but possibly.
How about as you go further down
To the south.
towards Highway 13?
So that'd be to the west towards 13. Well, yeah, it's kind of, you probably meet to the south.
Yes, and which would be to the bottom of the
Correct.
exhibit.
In what, so,
So if you went to the south,
yep.
um,
So if you keep going with your cursor, yeah, I think right about there, it starts to maybe get, the slope kind of changes, where it maybe goes higher.
is there an area that would take, and maybe Lou could help us here, is there an area of your property that would
I would say no.
put you in a place where with construction or development, you could place a house so you wouldn't be in the area between the toe and the top of the bluff?
It's my understanding that no. But Olivia or Lou would know. Maybe could answer that more thoroughly, I guess, but.
Yeah, I guess I was curious what was between like the house and the highway. Is that more of like a wetland type area where the rain, like the water tends to go down and pool down there? Or if putting the house closer to the road, is that more of a slope or like?
I wouldn't say it's a wetland, and I wouldn't say there's much of a slope. I just wanted to keep it back a little bit to have some yard.
And there's a sure setback from the
Yeah.
county.
There is a step,
Right.
yeah, and we had to meet that.
I don't know if this is a question for you or Lou. You said there were examples that would, in essence, be similar to this one. Historically, has there been any problem with those residences in terms of anything?
Yeah, why don't we move through
Yeah.
the comments?
We can come back to that.
All
when
right,
we're,
all right.
uh,
Discussion.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
That's it. No other questions?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion to open the public hearing.
Make a motion to open the public.
A motion by Elizabeth,
Second.
second by Ed. All right, we will open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak for or against this petition? The second time, if anyone would like to speak for or against this petition, now is the time. Look like anyone online wants to say anything. One more time. Would anyone like to speak for or against this petition? All right, the public hearing, we need a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion by Elizabeth,
Second.
second by Kelsey. Public hearing is closed. Would you like to ask your question to Lou now?
You're wondering about specific problems that we found over the
Yeah,
years.
has it deteriorated the aesthetics?
Mhm.
I mean, a house does what it does aesthetically, but have there been problems in further deterioration of the aesthetics of the bluff or dangers in erosion or?
Yeah, there are examples that I think that we would all point to as not being ideal, not being what we would hope to accomplish as far as development goes. And we're probably in the back of people's minds when the ordinances were being developed and discussions on this issue were coming up, and so it really comes down to a case-by-case basis. If you think that those issues are great enough in certain circumstances in order to warrant denial of a permit or a request. But yeah, I mean, we've seen in some locations certainly excessive erosion. We've seen some locations with driveways that people and property owners, as well as essential services, would have difficulty getting up into because of the steepness of the driveway and the ice and the different things that come from that. So yeah, I mean, there are issues with bluffside development.
Can that be prevented with more conditions?
In some cases, I think that can be prevented with things like erosion control plans, with conditions. Absolutely. Some cases, I think, depending on what's being proposed, this is that we're not talking about specifically for this site here, but I think that those are probably best, not being developed. And that's the reason I think that we have an ordinance as we have it, because the community has decided that that's the direction we want to go. So yes, I think in this specific request, you have a dwelling that's not, I mean, it could be up on 45% slopes and halfway up the bluff. It could be right on the edge of a bluff. So there's certainly much worse locations that it could be located. In this case, it's close to the bottom of the bluff. It's just above, the required slopes. So and then it's using like the access is decent, and using the contour to bring it across, and based on what's being proposed, erosion control plan might be able to address concerns that we have with the development of that in that location. And I think that's why staff presented it as it is as an approval. But I mean, that's what you guys are here to do as well, is represent the greater community and look at the overall project and see if that's something that that you agree with. So.
Thank you.
We pulled up the conditions, Susan, she had asked about them.
Pardon me? Oh, yeah. Is it possible, I'm sorry, did my auditor.
Go ahead.
Is it possible to require the owner to do a little more investigating? And it would be to, with your help, identify some of the previous variances that have been granted on a similar kind of ground, and see after X number of years what that looks like. And would there be something he could do to prevent anything that may be there?
Just to remind you, you're not supposed to be basing your decision on this parcel on what has happened on other parcels. Each parcel is unique. That's why we have the rules that we do. So we're basing it on the specific facts before you on this case.
Stephanie, would it be appropriate to require an erosion control plan prior to approval? Would that? would we need
I
to
believe
add
that's
a
part of the
condition, or-
development certificate process, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that that is a factor that they will consider when granting a development certificate, is to make sure erosion is addressed.
Okay.
Go ahead. No, not for long, Lou. Don't panic. I just was going to say, the petitioner also referenced the landscape plan, using native plants. Obviously, if it's developed by an excavator or a builder, that won't be acceptable. It needs to be a professional working in that field, just like the erosion control plan.
Do you have any more questions, I guess?
Would it be an option to, or would it make you feel better to table it until you could see the erosion control plan? I mean, I think
No,
that would be
I
a viable
trust, I
option.
trust our people.
Okay, that's how I feel as well.
I guess I was looking at this soil water conservation district paper, and most of it says it needs additional planning and design. And that kind of concerns me a little bit, if they're telling them that they need more information to
But then they
do, like,
had
the
to find
septic, and I don't know if that again falls into another one of these conditions that they have to get this all okayed first before they can continue, or if that's something where like this is just
Yeah, I guess
formality that was filled out, because
as a homeowner, I don't know if you'd want to go that deep into something that you haven't had approved on the base level yet,
right.
But I would trust the staff to make sure. I mean, I feel that's why we're adding these conditions, so
Right.
we're sure that all those things happen after we're done here.
Yeah, and the final note on that seems to be suitable, they say.
Yeah, I know, we've dug basements in, anecdotally in different municipalities, city of Winona, Rolling Stone, on pretty steep slopes, and a walkout basement is definitely a great way to mitigate that, because you can leave the existing slope
Right.
as it is, and you're just, landscaping around the house.
Right.
I guess I was looking more too at like, we don't have a septic system plan yet or anything, and I was curious where that was going in terms of where the house is located and the disturbance and the erosion that would come from that, and then also them just saying that there's restricted percolation due to the bedrock and stuff when it comes to an absorption field, and what that kind of means in terms of erosion and or how they're gonna
Sure.
proceed with that.
I'm sure it means
But-
a mound would be required.
That's
Like some
Sure,
little bit
What's up, Lou?
yeah, please.
Yeah, I mean, this is contingent on landscape soil erosion control plan being approved by SWCD and the department. So we will be getting that design for review. And a septic permit as well would need to meet Minnesota rules, chapter 7080. You know, we really don't know what type of system would go there until they get out and do soil borings. Whether it's a trench or a mound, but being the slopes that they are on, that does get challenging, but it would be doable based on those slopes. I mean, if they're over like 33% slope, then it becomes, if a mound is needed, then it becomes almost impossible to build that because you have to have a 3-to-1 slope. And so the toe of your mound would never catch your slope, you know, your bluff side. If it was, until, you know, it gets down to the bottom where it flattens out. So just the cost of something like that, it just wouldn't be really practical. Again, I think they are in the range where, they may be able to find something, but this would be contingent on them being able to, you know, design something that is buildable and can be installed there.
And you would review that?
Yeah, those all those plans come through our office. We review them and issue permits. Yeah.
Else? Go ahead, Ed.
So I'll follow up on some of the questions that I was presenting. I did take a comprehensive look at the comprehensive plan. And the plan, as we all know, really cherishes and promotes the bluffs within the county. And the bluffs make this county and the upper Mississippi River Valley almost a national treasure, which is unique to this area. And then I look at the provisions of the overlay district, and the language really isn't iffy, where it says developments and other land disturbing activities are prohibited on slopes over 25%. Such slopes shall be preserved in their natural state. And from what Lou shared with us, and from our own intuition, the zoning ordinance is trying to promote the preservation of the bluffs and to keep them as much in their natural state as possible for all the reasons that we enjoy when we travel up and down the river or down the highways. And then the overlay district further recites that any development, including all structures and driveways, is prohibited between the top of the bluff and essentially the bottom of the bluff, all for the same reason. There are construction problems that go along with building on the bluffs. Jordan has much more experience than I would on that. They can probably all be worked around and all be fixed. I believe that this county has adopted a zoning ordinance to provide its officers and commissioners and staff with guidance on what to do in situations like this. And the overarching theme in the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance is to preserve and protect the bluffs and not allow construction or development in a situation like the application before us. So I personally want to follow the guidance of the zoning ordinance. I want to follow the spirit and the intent of the comprehensive plan. And I want to see the bluffs preserved in their beauty for as long as possible. And what may have happened in the past is the past. And as Lou said, some of the past developments have worked out and some of them haven't. When we have language like this in a document, a zoning ordinance that guides our consideration, telling us that development is prohibited for various reasons, I take that very seriously, and I want to follow the zoning ordinance, and I want to preserve the Bluffland community of this county. And for those reasons, I will be making a motion to table this application and ask the county attorney and or the staff to prepare findings of fact that would support the denial of this application. And if that motion were to pass, I would then ask for an extension on the 60-day time limitation provision.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
Two things on that. First is if you're going to, if your intention is essentially to deny it, you should deny it and make your findings on the record, and we can prepare those written ones to bring back to you to sign at a later date. But you have before you what the staff believes are supported findings, and we don't really have a good basis for your explanation otherwise. So if you want us to craft language, we can. You just have to tell us what you want it to include. The other piece on this is the references to the zoning ordinance and following those rules. Those rules are what you're being asked to determine whether or not an exception is appropriate. So yes, there are rules, but we're not bound by them. We are here to determine if there's practical difficulties that would support not following the rules in this particular case. So that's how you should make sure you're focusing on your analysis.
Stephanie, let me ask you a question. If the rules as we read them prohibit development on this site,
Mhm.
Would it be analogous to zoning ordinance provisions that prohibit a certain use within a zoning
Nope.
district?
No, use variances are different. You can't have a use variance. What you can have is a variance from the steep slopes provision, a variance from the provision that you can't have a structure between the top and the toe of the bluff. You can vary from those. Those are more of an area kind of setback, more analogous to the setback kind of things. It's not analogous to a use variance.
And are you suggesting then that rather than a motion to table, perhaps I would make a motion to deny and ask you to craft the
Yes.
findings of fact?
Yep, if that's your intention, then yes, I would, instead of tabling it, you should do the denial. I can sit here and wordsmith for you if need be, but that would be the motion. Tabling it to have staff do something that we're not quite clear on is a little harder to do.
And I could make a rough suggestion.
Yeah. If you give me some facts to use, I can do that to wordsmith it for you. I just need to know what your basis is.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, they need to be the groups.
yes, I understand that.
There's none of us.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I mean, it is, to me, it's hard to argue.
Mr.
Would-
Chair, just a point of order on that.
Oh, yeah.
You have a motion on the floor with no second.
Okay,
So there either needs to be a second or fail for lack of a second.
all right, before we move ahead,
Actually, there wasn't a motion.
you did make a motion.
I
You
said,
can
He
withdraw.
said he would.
I
You
said I
motion.
would.
He
Okay,
said would.
I didn't know if
Right.
this was the time
Right.
or not.
Would it be helpful to go through each condition and talk about it?
or is it
Or is it
maybe
one where you
specific
want-
ones that
yeah,
you
or
take
specific
issue
one.
with?
Sure.
I guess you're probably thinking maybe number 2, the consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Definitely number 2. It is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan to develop on these bluffs in this specific application. And I'd also look at the practical difficulties language.
Yeah, that's where I see him having issue complying with the comprehensive plan, which is why we're here.
Yes,
This is the most suitable piece of his property that he can build on.
so my position would be that the practical difficulties do not exist because the variance will not be consistent with the comprehensive plan. And the practical difficulties, if they arguably and hypothetically exist, are not unique to this property because they exist throughout the Bluffland community. There's
But
not,
his property is only steep slopes. So that is a uniqueness to the parcel that he has. He doesn't have a better spot to put it. And that's the property he has to build on.
it may be unique on his property, but it's not unique to the extent that that problem exists almost everywhere in the
Yeah, but we're
area.
considering his property,
Okay.
this parcel.
Well, then I'll give you that for
Okay.
purposes of our discussion and remain consistent with my position that the variance would not be consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Does this, oh, sorry,
And I would
go ahead.
I would also say that in number 1, the variance is not in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. The intent and purpose of the ordinance is to prevent construction and development on slopes of this nature and on the bluffland area itself. Number 3, we've talked about the practical difficulties, and for purposes of our discussion, will concede that.
So would you like to make a motion to change the findings of fact?
I'd make a motion to deny the application because the variance is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. And the variance is not in harmony with the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance.
You will have to provide your reasons for those changes in the description of that finding of fact.
The reasons are that the comprehensive plan has as one of its primary overall general growth goals is the protection of major natural resource area in the county, including the bluffs. And granting this variation would be contrary to the overall general growth goal of the comprehensive plan as recited on page 14 of the plan. The variance should also be denied because it would not promote the natural resource protection. These are steep bluffs, and on page 30 of the comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan and its concomitant zoning ordinance encourages the preservation of steep bluffs without construction. On page 31 of the comprehensive plan, the goals and policies recite that the county and the county through us on this application encourages us to promote land management practices by protecting the natural resources of the county, including streams, rivers, wetlands, forests, and bluffs. And bluffs are repeatedly referenced, promoted, and cherished in the comprehensive plan. And for that reason, I also believe the variation should be denied.
Stephanie, do you have enough to go on there?
I will, yes.
Okay.
Is there a second to that motion?
Isn't there someplace too?
Before discussion, we need to know, either have a second or have the motion fail for lack of.
Okay. Do we have a second on that motion?
Second.
You'll second that?
Oh,
Okay. We have a second by Elizabeth, motion by Ed to change the findings of fact.
It was a motion to deny the application with those changes to the findings of fact.
So all in favor of that motion, do we need to,
Discussion on your
Okay.
motion. It's not just changing.
do we need to go over the, should we read through those first?
I can, if you give me a minute or two, I can.
Okay.
correct.
Do you have any discussion on that?
I also have a question related to that plan. And that is, there is mention there of allowing residential use of the bluffs. And how does that then weigh in with the,
Yeah, I would add that the comprehensive plan doesn't only mention protection of the bluffs, it also mentions protection of the farmland, providing a little bit of room for people to, what did they exactly say
enjoy
there?
that land or something?
Yeah. Relief from the multiple standards of steep slopes and bluffs. I don't think it's a hard line that you can't build anything on bluffs, especially when that's the
Right.
only thing you have to work with.
Right.
And I wasn't suggesting that the comprehensive plan solely and only wants to promote the bluffs. Bluffs are one of the components the plan wants to promote and protect. But since that's the issue before us, that's the only reason I focused in on the bluffs.
I drove up this valley earlier today. It's definitely not a high traffic road. It's gravel in this area.
Yeah.
I don't think it sees a lot of tourism or anything. It's
Right.
mostly farmland, pastures, a creek down below. It's a pretty beautiful spot, and I can see where the driveway is definitely in the optimum spot because where the house is kind of on a bend. Then the driveway comes in off a straight part of the road, and it actually looks pretty mellow from the road. In the winter, the road will probably be harder to navigate than the driveway will.
Yeah.
And there's several other properties in this valley,
far
some being
apart, are
tucked
they?
up to the bluff. They're pretty spread out. His closest neighbor is quite a ways away, yeah.
And I guess, I look at number one with the, recognizing the ability of residents to pursue reasonable uses of the property. And since that's the best, most flat spot and, his reasonable use is, hunting land and preserving the rest of it. I'd look at it in that way as supporting a comprehensive plan to a degree because he's going to use it in a reasonable manner that is like consistent with the area, with the stretched out amount of people and fact that it's kind of a lower driven road. And the fact that he looked at other spots and so did the staff with other areas on the property that could be used to build a dwelling, and this was the best spot.
Yeah, I mean, it's right in the corner. There's gonna be limited disturbance to the entire rest of the property.
Seems like there might be more disturbance for the road on the other person's property than maybe what he's doing on his own property, so.
You mean the
The
driveway?
driveway, the easement for the driveway. I'm not sure how long that driveway was, but
It's fairly long. It
it
doesn't,
looks long.
it looks like it's been there quite a while though.
Mhm.
I agree with what you're saying. I think it has the same characteristics as the rest of that area.
Modified language if the Board of Adjustment wishes.
Ed, would you like to read that through and see if that's agreeance with what you're wishing to change?
Stephanie, is the modified language on the screen now?
Yes. 1 and 2. And it would be, they would read the is not.
Okay. That makes sense now.
I just have it showing with no mark up. So this is what it looks like if it's marked up. I'm assuming you didn't read that.
Could you also add that, it may be there, I don't see it at the moment.
Number one or number 2?
It would actually be adding provisions that would recite that the proposed development would be on slopes over 25%. And all within the prohibited area of the top of the bluff and the toe of the bluff. That would be fine.
Okay, any other discussion before we put this to a vote?
Motion then would be to deny the permit and with the revised findings of fact.
Yes.
All right, all in favor of denying the permit with the revised findings of fact,
It's a variance.
variance, sorry. Denying the variance with the proposed changes to the findings of fact. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay.
Nay.
1 in favor, Ed. That motion does not pass. Would anyone else like to make a motion regarding this variance?
I agree that the bluffs should be protected and it's you know, erosion control and the beautification of it. But I also think that in terms of this specific property with where this petitioner can put his home, that it is in harmony because it's in the best spot it could possibly be for this specific property. And that even though the goal is to protect the bluffs, it's also to recognize the ability of residents to pursue reasonable uses of property. And to me, him building his dwelling in the best location possible, disturbing least amount, is to me a reasonable use.
I also believe that he's demonstrated that he cares about it. It's family.
Right.
And he's going to do everything possible to make sure that it maintains its beauty.
Mhm.
That's why he loves it.
Mhm.
And I think that we as human beings should have rights also to live where we love. That doesn't always match with some of the legal perspectives we have, but that's where I think we attenuate things
Right.
a bit so that people can live their dreams,
Mhm.
I guess, and still protect.
I agree. Would you guys like to make a motion in that direction? Either of you two?
Make a motion that we vote to approve.
With the findings of fact written by staff.
Yeah, and the conditions listed.
All right, we have a motion by Kelsey and a second by Elizabeth. Any discussion on that? Already got that out of the way. All right, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
They,
Ed opposed? That has passed.
It does?
Yep. And so we'll see you tonight at the planning commission meeting. I need to read the appeal to district court. Okay, before you take off. All decisions by the Board of Adjustment in granting variances or in hearing appeals from any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination shall be final, except that any aggrieved person or persons or any department, board, or commission of the jurisdiction or of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days after receipt of notice of the decision to the district court in the county in which the land is located on questions of law and fact. Any party that would like to submit an appeal to the decision rendered at the public hearing must do so to the district court. Planning and Environmental Services is not responsible for filing the appeal or obtaining representation or by counsel for the petitioner. Lou, do you have something to add?
Nope.
Okay. All right, so we will move on to the next petition.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Olivia?
We're just gonna totally give it a try, otherwise just tell me when you want something.
Do I need to read the docket number, et cetera? Okay. We're considering BOA -04-20-23-02.
Okay, so you will notice a theme at this Board of Adjustment meeting. The second petition that you have in front of you today is to allow new residential development on steep slopes within the MRB Natural Features Overlay District pursuant to the chapters listed there. So an overview of the project location, you can see it at the top of the larger map on the screen there. It's along Leeward Road, which is a service drive of Highway 61. So if you keep going down Highway 61, you'll run into County Road 3 and then Minor and Miller Valley. It is in Richmond Township, Section 21, and you can see Richmond Township highlighted in green there on the county map as well. So this was the applicant created site plan. The petition was co-submitted G Cubed Engineering along with the representative of the property. You can see there that they have the proposed driveway leading up to the garage and dwelling. And then they also have the septic system, both the primary location and secondary location mapped out on there as well. This was the staff created site plan. It does show that the new dwelling would be located within the toe and the top of the bluff. And that it is in the MRB overlay district, which is the Mississippi River Bluffs, given its proximity to the river. And development would be occurring on slopes over 18%, which is the difference between the MRB district and then the standard bluff overlay. The slope has to be less steep in order to need a CUP or a variance in the MRB district. So some of the site considerations, it is a parcel of record. Consisting of 1.68 acres. It is zoned urban residential. If you've been along Leeward Road and some of the service drives on Highway 61, you'll notice that it is a more residential area in nature. The building site is proposed on a flatter terraced area of the property. It does have less steep slopes compared to some of the other areas of the property. It would have a walkout basement to take advantage of the existing slopes in that area. And then G Cubed did provide some of the erosion control measures that are planning on being implemented with this. In this site as well, when we did the site visit, Amanda from the SWCD accompanied us as well when we were on site, and a representative from G Cubed was there as well. So this is showing Leeward Road. It's a little bit hard to see, but there's a stake in that ground photo. At the top of it's pink. You can kind of see where that driveway access is going up to where the driveway and then the building site would be. This is looking at the building site itself. If you're looking to the northwest, in the background there, you can see a garage or outbuilding of the neighbor there to the north.
What's the zoning again?
Urban residential.
Urban?
Yep. This is looking at the same building site, but from the opposite way. You can see Highway 61 there in the background. And you can, see a little bit of that flatter terraced area. If you go obviously up the slope, it does get steeper on their property. And then this is just looking east towards the Mississippi River. You can see the tree line between Leeward Road and where the building site would be. Richmond Township did indicate support regarding this request. They did hear the petitioner at the December 13th of last year meeting. The petitioners submitted the form to us after that. So our recommendation would be that the Board of Adjustment should consider all materials and testimony before making findings that support their decision. Staff analysis and draft findings do support granting the variance. And should the Board of Adjustment decide to approve the petition, we've drafted 3 conditions for your consideration. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Is the letter that was sent in by the neighbor, is that the one that you could see on the picture that you took? That one right there?
It is not. So if you go back a couple of slides, Kay, when you're looking straight to the Mississippi River from one of those photos. So Gull Lane is actually across Highway 61.
Oh, so they're on the other side.
Yeah, they're bordering
Okay.
Gull Lane and then the river.
Putting up sandbags right now. They're probably putting up sandbags right
They're
now.
not even cute.
Is that in the floodplain?
No,
Across the highway on the.
Yeah, I
yeah.
see that. But the houses on the other side are.
I would imagine so.
Any more questions for Olivia?
Thank you.
Discussion?
Commissioner just saying.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Please.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Griffin with G Cubed in Chatfield, and I'm representing the applicant this evening. First and foremost, I want to state that we agree with the staff report and the staff conditions. I do want to reiterate that unlike the previous one that was in quite steep slopes, under a normal circumstance, we wouldn't need the variance. It's because of that Mississippi special zoning where it increased it or lowered it from the 25% down to 18%, which toggled us to be here this evening or this afternoon. I think it's important to know in that Mississippi district that this particular piece of property, you pretty much can't see it from the Mississippi, you know, so as far as worrying about more restrictive for the view shed, you cannot essentially see this. You got two roads between us and the Mississippi and a tree line down there. And so, I just think that's an important delineation there with the variance to the zoning. The other thing that I think is important, our client, unfortunately, he passed away through this process, but when he bought this for his kids and grandkids, it was buildable at that time. And then since that time, this additional restriction came in. And so when he went to pull a building permit, he was just shocked in the fact that it changed between the time he purchased it and wanted to build a place. But like I say, because of it, we have to go through the more extensive. We've worked with staff. We've got a site plan done, a grading plan done, erosion control plan done, and septic's all done. So with that, I'm here to answer any question. I did see the one note from the neighbors. It's important to note that not 1 inch of our water goes on our neighbor to the north, that the one house, not 1 inch of our water will go that person. I know they aren't the one complaining or with the letter, but it's important to note that. And it's also important to note that, you know, our clients owned it for a while, but it's pretty much been bare there. A lot of times when we post-development, once it gets to a stabilized grass surface and maintain it, it actually will have less erosion than, you know, in some buckthorn and different things that are in it right now. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
You mentioned the change in the zoning ordinance from the time your client purchased the property until he went to pull a permit.
Correct.
Do you know when the zoning ordinance change took place approximately?
I do. My client purchased it in 1989, and the change went in effect March 15th of 2011.
And with your client having unfortunately passed away, who will be?
The new applicants are his children. They've signed since his deceased.
And is it a resident or is it a recreation?
A residence, a small resident, family residence. And like staff said, the slope actually works out really nice for a walkout basement. I mean, with the slope there, when dropping 10 feet in the basement, you're gonna have a nice flat, you know, both upper and lower. It's gonna blend in nice there.
You don't have any other questions for Jeff?
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll take a motion to open the public hearing. A motion by Elizabeth,
Second.
second by Kelsey. All right, the public hearing is open. Would anyone like to speak for or against this petition? For second time, is there anyone that would like to speak for or against this petition? Want to check online, Kay?
Yep.
change. All right, for the third time, would anyone like to speak for or against this petition? Motion to close, anyone?
It moves close public.
Motion by Elizabeth,
Second.
second by Kelsey to close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. Discussion.
Looks like they are a little bit further along and have a little bit more of a plan.
It would be nice if they were all this well engineered when they
Right.
came to us. It
Yeah.
helps a lot.
Make a motion to approve the variance with the conditions attached.
Findings of facts is written. All right. So motion by Kelsey.
Unless somebody hasn't.
Oh, second.
Oh, okay. And then we have a second by Elizabeth.
I'm sleeping.
All right. Anything else you guys would like to say? Anyone would like to say?
I'm going to repeat and reincorporate everything I said on the last application without specifically saying it again.
Okay. All right. All in favor of approving this petition with the findings of fact as written and the conditions attached, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, I will read the appeal to district court one more time for you. All decisions by the Board of Adjustment in granting the variances or in hearing appeals from any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination shall be final, except that any aggrieved person or persons or department, board or commission of the jurisdiction or of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days after receipt of the notice of decision to the district court in the county in which the land is located on questions of law and fact. Any party that would like to submit an appeal to the decision rendered at the public hearing must do so to the district court. Planning and Environmental Services is not responsible for filing the appeal or obtaining representation by counsel for the petitioner. So that will pass. I believe that's all we have.
I would like to have one more just statement.
Go ahead.
I want Kay to tell us her story and explain why we have trees.
Oh yeah, I was wondering if it was someone's birthday.
No, it's not my birthday. Today is my last Board of Adjustment meeting as Planning and Environmental Services Director for Winona County. It's been my privilege to serve in this role, serve the citizens, as well as the Board of Adjustments during that period of time. You know, it takes a lot of energy. It's stressful for the work that all of you do in addition to your regular lives, and it's very much appreciated by staff and someone in my job. So there'll be a job hunt. Maureen Holte, the county administrator, will be the interim. We have excellent staff, as you know. Eric Johnson, our zoning administrator, is supervisor in this area. Lou Overhaug, and as well as Olivia Luther, will be here doing the excellent work that they always do. I am finishing my move to eastern Wisconsin, where I'm renovating a 1927 house that's all brick with a very cool patio, and where my son, mother, and brother live. And if I look for another job after counting ceiling tiles for about a month or so, it will not probably be the top job. I'm going to try to ratchet down the stress just a little bit. We were chatting in the office with Eric and Lou for sure about maybe how many planning and environmental services directors I've outlasted, but you'll have to talk to them about that. But like I said, it's been a pleasure. And so the treats are on me on behalf of the department. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Kate.
Motion to adjourn.
I need a motion to adjourn by Ed, a second, was that a
Second.
second by Kelsey? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I
Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned.